Hey guys, so it is June 15th. It is a Tuesday with a balance patch, so a little shaken up because it's normally on Wednesdays. I'll keep this one rather short since you guys probably aren't expecting one today. And Blizzard's done some really interesting things. So we're going to get right into it. If you haven't I guess we're not getting right into it. If you haven't seen one of my balance patch videos before, the thing that you should know is I like to break down how this is going to affect Storm League, how this is going to affect the competitive environment, and potentially more of a casual environment. What I mean by a competitive environment is like teams. CCL, Masters Clash, as well as like the higher levels of NGS and Heroes Lounge. That's generally what I mean by competitive. Lower levels of Heroes Lounge, generally people don't have the coordination in their teams quite yet, but you'd be surprised at some of the lower divisions. But put simply, they still tend to run more Storm League meta drafts rather than CCL drafts. So just keep in mind that's what I mean by more Storm League competitive. And then if I say casual, it often usually just means like lower levels of Storm League, more quick match, ARAM, but I'll usually clarify what they are. So that being said, each change I will focus on how it's going to affect the meta in those different environments. Now let's get to it. So, what I would expect to happen, we did have those reworks. I'd expect each of those reworks to be touched just a little bit so we can kind of see where everyone is. Like, again, we've seen like Valla has been pretty dominant. Her win rate shot up. Where, on the other hand, someone like Raynor has kind of dropped down a little bit after his rework. So, all of those are going to get touched. But I'm actually kind of surprised to see that we have these other options. Lone talents have been renamed to Gambit talents. I think that's okay. Maybe. I mean, they're all death related, so maybe they have the potential of loan talents in the future that are more like, hey, you can take a loan of something and then you're going to slowly lose it throughout the game. Or, I don't know, I think loan talent was an okay name. Either way, let's get into it. Blaze, Flamestream. They're making it to where if you hit, it's the level 7 talent, Crossfire. They're making that baseline. So if you hit with both of the Qs on one person, they get a little crit. So that's kind of nice. It also triggers Flamestream's Pyromania cooldown reduction, which is kind of nice too. That was also part of Crossfire. Level 1 new habits. Pyromania cooldown reduction from regen gloves is reduced from 8 to 6. This is because they're putting the Crossfire baseline, that cooldown reduction baseline, so you're going to be getting more cooldown reduction anyways. Suppressive Fire has been moved from level 13, and then all of the 13 talents removed from level 7. Now, all the level 13 talents were like the lower, this was the lower spell power, this was the lower attack speed, and this was the fuel on the ground. These talents were really good for addressing strong enemy heroes, and they were really good in a variety of reasons. Then they took all the 13 talents, or the 7 talents, and they moved them to 13, they buffed all of them, or changed them a little bit. I think this is kind of a mini rework by just how it's changed him, so I'm excited to see how that looks when we get in game. But as far as the builds, I don't think too much is going to change as far as main tank or off lane. But there are some change functionalities like grill and kill. Ignited oil spill damage bonus now granted instantly. Ignited oil spill bonus increased from 35 to 45. Heroes hit reduced on the quest, and the quest reward increases the duration. This is a pretty good buff to this. Is it worth a 13 talent? I don't know. Let's look at the other 13 talents. Additional functionality to adhesive petroleum, which was the when it's lit on fire, it still slows. Additional functionality. Enemies standing in oil spill when it's ignited take 35% more basic attack damage from Blaze for 3 seconds. 35% more damage isn't that great, especially since his basic attack damage is a little weak, but either way. Collision Course. Jet propulsion deals another 320 or an additional 325 damage to its collision target. That's pretty good. That's a good chunk of damage. Keep in mind that's scaled at level 0, so by level 13, that's going to be like a little over 400 damage, and that's a good chunk. So I would say, as far as which one's going to lead to the most impactful damage, meaning damage at the best time, I would say this new collision course would probably be pretty significant. Garrosh. So as far as how he's going to change in the meta, I think as a main tank, he's going to be in a pretty good spot because you do have a lot of burst potential. You have a lot of ways to answer the enemy team, but he still falls short in the same areas that he fell short in before. He has a kind of a janky escape. He's got a lot of other little problems here and there. So, and any displacement really hurts him. So if he gets displaced, he can't escape very easily. His engage also isn't 100% guaranteed. Like it's I guess it's more guaranteed than some, like Muradin, but it's less guaranteed than others like ETC or Varian. So I think there's definitely still the same place that he had in competitive, but I think he's a little bit more viable as a main tank now than he was before. Garrosh. So Into the Fray is now a baseline, and the armor that it gives isn't going to be 25 anymore, it's going to be 20. So they're taking a lot of talents and quests that were kind of required to take, or everyone took, and they're making them baseline. Level 7, Intimidation, the attack speed reduction reduced from 40 to 30. The Oppressor changed the passive talent to a Bloodthirst talent, so instead of auto-attacking the target to reduce their spell power, you have to use a W, which I believe it's additional functionality, so it's auto attack or W applies spell power reduction. Keep in mind, spell power reduction also reduces healing dealt, so that can be really good. There's a new talent instead of Into the Fray called Loktar Agar, increasing the Into the Fray's armor by 20, so you can give 40 armor to someone. Into the Fray's cooldown is reduced by 12 seconds for each enemy hero hit. So this adds a new playstyle of Garrosh to throw your ally into the enemies to give them armor and to also reduce the cooldown of Into the Fray. If you hit 3 targets, I believe it's a 45 second cooldown, so you'd have to hit 4 targets, which is not realistic because the AoE is very small. So realistically, you're probably going to hit 1 target. Decent cooldown reduction, and to give 40 armor to a target is pretty cool. So this could be really cool if you're running like Garrosh with an Uther as your healer, because then you can throw the Uther in, he can stun, and then you can walk up to the target, throw them back, and then your Uther has enough armor to survive whatever they want. It could be cool with specific melee assassins too. You could potentially have a Maiev throw her thing back, and then you can throw the Maiev in, she can grab a bunch of people, and then she can immediately launch back. So there's a lot of strategies, which kind of makes Garrosh more of a initiator to the other heroes that might be on your team. So I think that's kind of neat. Does this make him a meta hero? No, but I think a lot of competitive teams are going to play around with this idea. And I think as far as him in Storm League, he's going to fit a very similar position that he fit before. If you're in range to auto attack, you're in range to W, so this won't make much of a difference on this tier. And this really won't make that much on this tier either. So overall, I don't expect Storm League to change very much, but I do expect a lot of competitive teams to try to play around with this at the very least. Johanna's rework was a little strange, and her build path was a little weird. A lot of the talents kind of felt negligible. In fact, if you look at her win rate, outside of this particular patch, but outside of 2 talents, level 13 and 16, the win rate differences of all of her talents were basically the same, no matter what talent you picked or what order or what comp you picked them into. And so in those situations, it's almost like it doesn't matter what talents you're picking. So they made Iron Skin more they buffed Iron Skin up in the baseline, and then they nerfed Hold Your Ground so that the level 4 would be a little bit more competitive. And then level 7, they also reduced the cooldown of Steed Charge, and they buffed the healing reduction of Sins Exposed. I think this is getting closer to where it should be to make this talent a viable talent. I like the Q build, and with them kind of nerfing this, I think that Q at 4 and 13, 4 and 7 is definitely a possibility, but the level 7 movement speed talents make it so much easier to land your Q on multiple targets. So I think 7 is still very debatable, but I do think that Subdue at 4 is a lot more valuable. Falling Sword's damage is being increased. I believe they also fixed the bug to where it's dealing the damage twice, but in their internal numbers, it seems like they felt that even with it doing damage twice, it wasn't really that overpowered because they nearly doubled it. Well, they didn't double the damage. They bumped it up by 50%. But so kind of somewhere in between the bug and not having the bug. And then Holy Fury got a little bit of a buff. This talent is still not as good as Spinning Hammers in nearly any build, but it's getting there. So that's kind of cool. Spinning hammers right now is very good. So as far as the Johanna build, I haven't updated any of my builds on my website in a little while, so don't even look there yet. What I would recommend for right now, level 1, I would probably go with Laws of Hope. And this is, of course, all the talents can adjust, but level 1, Laws of Hope. Level 4, I would probably go Subdue. Level 7, I think you can go with any talent here. Just really decide which one's going to work the best for you. I would probably do the W movement speed talent. I think it's Conviction. Level 10, I still like Blessed Shield because I don't like removing the tank from the fight for 2 seconds. But there are some potentials for Falling Sword, especially if you think you can get to level 20, because level 20 is so strong. Level 13, Spinning Hammers. Level 14, I like the auto attack speed increase because it allows you to quickly do camps, siege, and you're pretty scary if the fight goes a little bit longer than the enemies are expecting. And level 20, I generally just upgrade whatever ult you picked. In the competitive environment, you can take the Invincible. Muradin, Stormbolt quest is now being baseline, so it's no longer a quest, I guess. It's a, you hit level 10, you get it, which is kind of nice. And the reason that I think this is so nice, the reason that I think this is so nice is that I don't like quests that force you to use an ability in an incorrect way. What I mean by that is Muradin's Q quest gets you in the feeling that you should just be throwing your Q out every time that you have it, rather than the times that are actually valuable. Muradins should be trying to stun targets their team is already attacking to give their team more time to attack that target. And so that's where the big problem is about this, is that if you're using your quest just willy-nilly, you're not going to have it when you really need it, and you're not going to get in the mentality of using it at the right time. So that's why I really like this change a lot, not to mention that the average Muradin finished their quest between level 13 and 16, so to be able to just have it right at level 10 is going to be great for the lower level play Muradins, as well as the Muradins that are using their Q at the correct times. Level 1, Perfect Storm, new functionality, basic attacks against enemy heroes increase Stormbolt's damage by 0.5. Another great change, because that means that you don't need to spam your Q for increased Q damage. Instead, you can just auto-attack people and save your Q for the right opportunities. I really like these changes for Muradin as far as when you should be using your stuns and when you shouldn't be. Okay, Stitches. Stitches has been kind of dominant in just how tanky he is, but they actually don't really nerf his tankiness too much. They don't make any major like hits to that build except for maybe Meat Hook at 13. And potentially like the digestive juices at 16. His meta build wasn't really changed too much. I guess Master Hooker as well. Overall, Stitches is still going to be played probably a little bit less in competitive, more about when he needs to be played. But if you guys have been having success with Stitches in Storm League, you can continue playing Stitches in Storm League. And they did also buff some of the underutilized talents as well. So feel free to play around a little bit more with the builds, but I've read through these a couple times and they won't be making that much of a difference. The only one that's kind of interesting for competitive now is Hungry Stitches, because it was kind of a downside talent where you would remove a lot of enemies from the fight and then suddenly they would all be grouped up where they need to be, and they'd pop out usually front line first and then back line after, and so the front line could usually answer the situation. And so Hungry Stitches was kind of bad. With the 75% slow, it probably won't be used in competitive, but it is a possibility if you're using it in Storm League that 75% slow will be pretty good. But yeah, overall, test out some underutilized talents. He's still going to be very strong in Storm League. Imperius. His basic attack damage is being increased. His Solarian Fire is being buffed. Battle Hunger is being buffed again. I think it's finally starting to get close to the other talents on that tier. And I would say, I was saying 100% was where it needed to be. But I think 80% is enough that you could probably get more value out of it when it's good. Blazes of Glory, damage increased from 150 to 185. That's pretty good. Holy Fervor, additional functionality, casting Molten Armor grants Holy Fervor for 2 basic attacks. Wow. So you get swipe without needing to activate it. You can just press your Molten Armor, which is your E, and it's got like a 12-second cooldown. That's pretty good for wave clear. If you W a wave and then you just press E and you swipe twice, Not in the early game, but probably by like level 13, that wipes a wave. And that's without Holy Fervor. And then before level 13, you can always just activate Holy Fervor for the side lane. Or sorry, you could activate Holy Fervor for the mid lane, and then you can use your E for the side lane and still be able to get back. So this allows a lot of potential for double soaking, and this is pretty good if the fights go long. I would say auto attack Imperius should be something that people should consider again. And I feel like this one is actually going to be slow in the competitive scene for people to realize that it's strong. But in Storm League, I think people are going to pick up on this a lot faster. But yeah, I think that auto attack Imperius has a lot of potential. Keep in mind that when you're swiping this talent, if you get a W on everyone and you've got your E bouncing to a bunch of enemy heroes, this talent's going to proc on all of them whenever you're swiping, so you're going to get huge heals. So yeah, auto attack, especially with the auto attack damage being increased, I think auto attack Imperius is definitely back on the menu. Anduin got some buffs. I'm actually a little surprised. His win rate was decent. And I was seeing a lot of success with him, but he's getting a lot of buffs. Pursued by Grace is getting a pretty significant buff. Flash Heal is getting a pretty significant buff. Chastise is even getting a pretty significant buff. His level 1 talent, Even-Handed Blessings, getting a buff. Lightwell is getting a buff. And now the individual healing cooldown reduced from 1 down to 0.875 seconds, and that's kind of weird, but it keeps it around the same cooldown if you're getting those heals off. Surge of Light cooldown reduction is being increased, and then we go into Binding Heal. Healing is being increased. That's your self-healing. Desperate Prayer, the cooldown's being reduced, the healing's increased. I mean, no matter what build you went on Anduin, you're seeing buffs. The W build was already doing really well, but if you did make those adaptations when the map and team comms aligned, then I would say, yeah, this is pretty good. There's a new functionality for Inner Focus. So Inner Focus was a talent that okay, so I don't remember what Inner Focus was on level 16. Inner Focus was it the top talent? No, it's just a new talent. Okay, I was like, there was no Inner Focus. So this is new functionality, but there was no Inner Focus. You can reset the cooldown of Flash Heal, and the next one heals for 25% more. Damaging Hero reduces this cooldown by 1 second, 20-second cooldown. So it's like the old Inner Focus that you would throw it out. This is pretty good. This is actually more competitive than Renew and more competitive than the other one. It's not more competitive. It's competitive with the double pull. So now if you don't need double pull, this is going to be a great talent. And if you do still need double pull, you have to give up a great talent, which is how level 16 talents should be. Brightwing's getting an overall buff. In fact, almost all healers across the board are getting a pretty interesting buff. So the healing's going to be increased. The cooldown is going to be reduced. Phase shift cooldown's being reduced. Phase shift level 1 talents being balanced accordingly to the cooldown. Peekaboo shield duration's being reduced. The heal bonus of the trait is being increased. Pixie boost, the increased movement speed bonus is being increased. Intensive Winds no longer increases the mana cost. This is huge because I thought this was the only thing holding this talent back. I liked this talent, but I never took it because you could only basically cast 1 ult anyways, maybe 2, and you're out of mana. So I would usually just take the activatable that makes it to where everyone gets your trait or your spell armor. Fairy Protector, additional functionality. Pixie Dust always bounces back and applies to Brightwing. That's interesting. Speedy Dragon reduces phase shift cast time by 1 second. So it's kind of neat. Overall, she's going to still be used in competitive, and this makes her stronger in Storm League. Stukov, Fetid Touch, is getting combined with Spine Launcher. It's a little bit of a nerf to Spine Launcher because it's going from 40% less damage to 50% less damage, and the slow is going from 20% down to 15%. And then Fetid Touch is still that quest. Reactive Ballista Spores now has an activatable to instantly spread it, and then also has the passive that instead of it activating, it's just going to reduce the cooldown of it. This is pretty cool. There's a few things that are interesting about this, like Bio Kill Switch's cooldown is going to recharge faster while you're at lower health. There may be a playstyle where you keep your health a little bit lower so you don't need to take the level 7 talent. I think this talent is going to make a lot of waves in both competitive and in non-competitive. Being able to walk up and instantly land a W on someone is going to make it to where you can basically land whatever route you want to land as long as you're close to the target. Low blow, additional functionality. It persists for 1 second after. These two talents are going to be very, very competitive with each other. Biotic armor is getting a nerf. It needed a nerf. Back to kind of an older state of the talent. Now it's going to be good when it's good, but there's going to be more competition. Targeted Excision is going to drop your bio kill switch to 8 seconds instead of 5. It's, you know, it's something that needed to happen. You can no longer keep like a really high uptime of biotic armor, but you also don't really need to anymore. Lingering Spines is removed. Virulent Reaction is the root durations being reduced. So they're nerfing some of his competitive talents, but then they're buffing some of his other talents and combining a few. He's still going to be very strong and competitive, and he's still going to be very strong in Storm League. Orphea is getting kind of a slight adjustment, additional functionality, hitting heroes at the end of Shadow Walls, grants an additional Chaos, Growing Nightmare, change functionality. Initial damage bonus of the Eruption applies to both Dreadwave and Eruption. Initial damage bonus is increased from 40 to 50%. Quest reward damage is increased from 25 to 50%. Monster Within additional functionality cooldown reduction continues for 5 seconds after, and Engulfing Oblivion armor reduction increased from 25 to 50. So reducing 50% of someone's armor doubles the damage that you can do that target. Final Staccato duration, no, it doesn't. It increases by 50%. Final Staccato duration reduced, and additional functionality dashes increase its duration by 1 second. So if you keep dashing with it, it keeps improving. This won't change much, but both of these are pretty interesting and are potentially competitive outside of her main build. I don't think this is going to change her main build at all, but it definitely makes Q build stronger and it makes E build stronger, but I don't think they're going to outperform the trait build just because the trait build is so consistent. Raynor, he's getting his damage nerf reverted. He's getting his penetrating round nerf reverted, and Ace in the Hole is going back to its old playstyle or old version of the talent. So basically all of this is reverting the nerfs from Raynor. So now he's just in a better position than he was before with more build variety, because you can go the old build, but you can also go the new build that I've showed before. Execute Orders no longer is pickable in ARAM games. This reduced his respawn timer by like a flat 30 or 35 seconds. Because the respawn timers are shorter in ARAMs, you basically had a Raynor who could throw an ult every time that he died and come back in like 6 to 10 seconds. So he was pretty strong in ARAMs if you took that talent. Valla, the damage bonus per hit is being reduced on Q, and the damage bonus per hit is being reduced on W. And then there's additional functionality. After hitting 20, you gain 40 additional multi-shot damage. So I think the way that this one's played out now is it's no longer an infinite quest, but it could just be worded a little bit weird. I'll have to go in game to see. Put simply, W build is still going to be very strong, but it's just not going to be as overwhelming as it was before, and kind of the same rules apply to Q build. Strong, but not quite as strong as it was before. Bug fixes, Lucio's mixing fires, correct? Wait. Okay. Yeah, that's correct. Falling Sword no longer does double damage. Renew's effects no longer lost by dying. Moral Compass's range bonus is no longer lost by dying. Malfurion's Serenity tooltip increases Tranquility's duration. No longer increases, and its tooltip has been updated to match its increased healing. Ragnarok's Meteor Bomb's bonus is no longer lost by dying. So they fixed all the major bugs that we've been talking about. In fact, these 3 heroes were the ones that had bans in competitive, so these should be able to revert some of those bans in competitive, so we can see a lot more action from these heroes, and particularly these talents that have been adjusted. And that is it, guys. Overall, there's some pretty major changes that will change up competitive a little bit, and quite a few things that'll just kind of bring a lot more playability into Storm League. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.